There are moments in a conflict that cut through all the noise, moments that feel different from the daily back and forth of missile claims and radar strikes. What we're covering today is one of those moments. A U.S. military airman was stranded inside Iranian territory. The United States launched what President Trump himself described as one of the most daring search and rescue operations in American military history, sending dozens of aircraft armed with the most lethal weapons in the U.S. arsenal deep into hostile airspace to bring one of their own home. They say they got him out. Iran says several of those aircraft never made it back. Today we're going to walk through everything that's been reported, everything that's been claimed, and everything that's still unclear, because this story has layers and every single one of them matters. Let's get into it. Before we get to the rescue operation itself, we need to answer the obvious first question. How did a U.S. military airman end up stranded inside Iran in the first place? The full picture here is still coming together, but what we know is that this is the second American airman to be downed inside Iranian territory during this conflict. President Trump confirmed on his Truth Social platform that a second crew member had been successfully recovered. The specific phrasing of second airman, implying a prior incident, had already placed American personnel in a similarly dangerous position. The airman recovered in this operation was identified by Trump as a colonel, a senior officer, not a junior crew member. Trump described him as a highly respected colonel, which tells you something about both the significance of the individual and why the decision was made to mount such an ambitious rescue rather than pursue other options. The broader context is important here. This conflict has seen sustained, high-intensity aerial operations by U.S. and Israeli forces over and around Iranian territory, aircraft operating in contested airspace, particularly in an environment where Iran has demonstrated increasingly capable air defense and electronic warfare systems, face real and significant risks. The downing of an aircraft and the survival of crew members who then find themselves inside enemy territory is one of the most difficult scenarios any military has to manage, and on this occasion, the United States chose to go in and get him. Let's start with the American side of this story, because President Trump's announcement on Truth Social is the clearest window we have into how Washington is framing what happened. The post was characteristically direct. Trump opened with the words, and I'm paraphrasing here to avoid direct reproduction, that they had succeeded, that the operation was complete, and that the rescued airman was safe. He described it as one of the most daring search and rescue operations in U.S. military history. That's a significant claim, and not one a sitting president makes lightly, because it invites immediate scrutiny and comparison. The bar for that description is genuinely high. U.S. military history includes some extraordinarily complex and high-risk rescue operations going back decades. What Trump also revealed, and this is operationally significant, is the scale of the force deployed. He stated that he personally directed the military to send dozens of aircraft, armed with what he described as the most lethal weapons in the American arsenal, to retrieve the airmen. Think about what that means in practical terms. Dozens of aircraft flying into Iranian airspace, or at minimum operating in close proximity to it, in a rescue operation. That's not a small insertion team slipping quietly across a border. That is a large, heavily armed, and presumably highly visible military operation conducted in the sovereign airspace of a country the United States is actively in conflict with. The airman was recovered. From Washington's perspective, the mission succeeded in its primary objective. Now here's where the story gets significantly more complicated, because Iran's account of the same operation looks very different. According to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, speaking through Tasnim news agency, several enemy aircraft were destroyed during the course of this operation. The spokesperson for Qatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, that's the unified command of the Iranian armed forces, provided a specific breakdown of what was claimed to have been downed. The list includes a C-130 military transport aircraft and 2 Black Hawk helicopters. Let's take those one at a time. The C-130 is a workhorse of U.S. military logistics and special operations. It's used for everything from cargo transport to aerial refueling to special operations insertion and extraction. In a rescue operation of this kind, a C-130 could plausibly be used for command and control, as a forward staging platform, or for the extraction of the rescued personnel itself. Losing one, if confirmed, would represent a significant material loss and, far more importantly, a potential loss of crew. The 2 Black Hawk helicopters are even more directly connected to the rescue mission profile. Black Hawks are the standard platform for special operations rescue insertions. If the rescue team was delivered and extracted by helicopter, which is the most operationally logical approach for this type of mission, then the 2 Black Hawks would have been at the sharp end of the operation. Their claimed destruction, if confirmed, raises deeply serious questions about what happened during the ground phase of the rescue. Iran also confirmed through its police command that the C-130 was downed in the south of Isfahan province. The geographic specificity there is notable. It's a named location, not a vague claim, which suggests some degree of physical evidence either exists or is being prepared for release. On top of the fixed-wing and rotary-wing losses, Iran's army separately announced the downing of an Israeli drone in the same province, Isfahan, earlier the same day. Whether that drone was connected to the rescue operation as a reconnaissance or jamming asset, or was an entirely separate incident, is not yet clear. One detail in the Iranian statement that deserves specific attention is the description of how the response was organized. The IRGC described this as a joint operation involving multiple components of Iranian security and military forces, specifically listing the aerospace force, the ground force, popular units, the Basiji, and the police command. That's a notably broad coalition of forces for a single engagement. The involvement of the Basij, a paramilitary volunteer force, and popular units alongside conventional military and aerospace elements suggests either a very large-scale response, or that the operation unfolded over a wide area requiring coordination between multiple agencies already deployed across the region. The inclusion of the police command is also interesting, given that Iran's police had been the first to announce the downing of the C-130. This suggests the initial detection and engagement may have involved ground-based forces before or alongside the aerospace components. What this paints, if accurate, is a picture of a dispersed, multi-force response that engaged the American aircraft across potentially multiple phases and locations, rather than a single point of interception. This is the section of the video that matters most, because the gap between what's been claimed and what's been independently confirmed is substantial, and being honest about that gap is more important than filling it with speculation. Here is what appears to be confirmed, or at minimum uncontested. 1. A U.S. military airman, a colonel, was stranded inside Iran. 2. The United States launched a large-scale search and rescue operation involving dozens of aircraft. 3. President Trump announced the airman was recovered safely. 4. Iran announced the downing of a C-130 and 2 Black Hawk helicopters in Isfahan province. 5. Iran separately announced the downing of an Israeli drone in the same province. Here is what remains unconfirmed or contested. 1. The U.S. has not publicly acknowledged any aircraft losses during the rescue operation. This is not unusual. Militaries rarely confirm losses in real time, particularly during ongoing operations. 2. No independent visual confirmation of the downed C-130 or Black Hawks has been widely verified at the time of this script. 3. The exact timeline of events, when the rescue was completed relative to when Iranian forces claimed to have downed the aircraft, is not clearly established in public reporting. That last point matters enormously. If the airman was extracted before the aircraft were engaged, the mission could be considered a success from the U.S. perspective, even if losses were subsequently sustained. If the aircraft were downed during the extraction, the picture is far more complex and potentially far more costly in human terms. We don't know which of those scenarios is accurate, and anyone telling you they do at this stage is going beyond what the evidence supports. Trump's claim that this was one of the most daring rescue operations in U.S. military history invites us to put it in some historical context, because that context helps us understand both the difficulty of what was attempted and the stakes involved. The most famous failed rescue operation in U.S. military history is almost certainly Operation Eagle Claw in 1980, the attempt to rescue American hostages held in Tehran. That operation ended in disaster at a desert staging area inside Iran, with 8 American service members killed and multiple aircraft lost before the assault force even reached Tehran. It remains one of the most studied operational failures in modern military history. More recently, the 2011 raid that resulted in the death of Osama bin Laden included the loss of a helicopter, a modified Black Hawk that went down during the operation and had to be destroyed to prevent the technology falling into Pakistani hands. That mission is remembered as a success, but it wasn't without significant moments of near failure. Rescue and recovery operations in hostile territory are among the highest risk missions any military undertakes. They require precise intelligence, precise timing, and the ability to execute under fire in an environment where the enemy knows you're coming, because your presence is inherently detectable. The fact that the U.S. committed dozens of aircraft to this mission reflects how seriously that risk was assessed, and how seriously the obligation to recover their personnel was taken. Beyond the immediate human story of one airman recovered, what are the broader strategic implications of what happened here? Several things stand out. First, this operation confirms that U.S. personnel have been operating in environments where being downed inside Iranian territory is a real possibility. The fact that this is apparently the second such incident suggests this is not a freak occurrence, but an operational reality of this conflict that both sides are now navigating. Second, if Iran's aircraft loss claims are even partially accurate, this operation came at a significant material cost. A C-130 and 2 Black Hawks represent substantial hardware and, far more critically, the crew members aboard them. The US has not confirmed losses, but the absence of denial is not the same as a denial. Third, Iran's ability to coordinate a multi-force response involving aerospace, ground, paramilitary, and police elements to engage US aircraft in real time is operationally significant. Whatever one thinks of the broader conflict, the speed and breadth of the described Iranian response, if accurate, suggests a more capable and integrated air defense and ground response network than is sometimes assumed in Western analysis. Fourth, the political dimension of this story is considerable. Trump's announcement was triumphant in tone, framing the operation as a historic success. Iran's counter-narrative of multiple aircraft downed, of enemy forces suffering losses in the attempt, tells a completely different story. Both narratives will be amplified, and the truth, as almost always in these situations, likely sits somewhere in between. It would be easy, covering a story like this, to get lost entirely in the hardware, the aircraft types, the operational logistics, the strategic implications. But at the center of this story is a human being. A colonel in the United States military found himself stranded inside Iran, one of the most dangerous places on earth for an American service member to be right now. His colleagues, his chain of command, and ultimately his commander-in-chief made the decision to go in after him with everything they had. He came home. Whatever the full cost of that operation turns out to be, and we may not know the complete picture for days or weeks, the fact that a decision was made to risk dozens of aircraft and the crews aboard them to bring one person home says something about the values the US military holds around never leaving personnel behind. That principle has costs, sometimes very high costs, and the full accounting of what this operation cost, in aircraft, in crew, in strategic exposure, is still being written. Here's where things stand. A US colonel stranded inside Iran has been recovered. President Trump has confirmed it. The United States military conducted a large-scale, heavily armed rescue operation to make it happen. Iran claims that operation came at a price: a C-130 transport aircraft and 2 Black Hawk helicopters downed, a joint multi-force response across Isfahan province, and an Israeli drone destroyed in the same area on the same day. The US has not publicly confirmed or denied losses. Independent verification of the Iranian claims is still pending. What is not in dispute is that this conflict continues to produce events of extraordinary intensity and consequence. Events that deserve serious, careful, honest analysis, rather than reflexive cheerleading or dismissal from any direction. We'll continue covering every development as the picture becomes clearer. If this breakdown gave you a better understanding of what happened and why it matters, share it, because this story is moving fast and the details matter enormously. Stay informed. We'll see you in the next one.